Yeah, I think you can get me there. So this is my task: present on solid waste recycling, the key risks and mitigating factors associated with solid waste recycling and support a joint review and discussion on the checkouts. So that's that's what we're going to do. Is there anything specifically again that you think you'd like to cover? You'd like me to talk about today? Might not be. It's just
I don't know. The question is more oriented into the municipal waste, your presentation, or
no?
General?
It's general. It's general. But if there's any specific questions about it.
So maybe during the presentation, can be some discussion.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. Okay. So the timeline for today is flexible, except we have a hard stop at 11:30. I'm meant to be in the sky at 2 o'clock. So so I think we should get that. So we'll talk about an introduction and cover some broad issues like we did yesterday. We will talk about risk management control, so I get a flavour of what's going on, and we can discuss things around that. And then some key risks from solid waste recycling, and then discussion around the checklist. And we're going to use a MRF as an example. If you don't know what it is, doesn't matter, we'll get there. A bit about risk, and then you guys get to go for lunch, and I get to run to the airport and have a good search, because I've got a metal brace on. Trying to go through an airport with a metal brace is really quite interesting. Okay, so similar to yesterday, except I can't promise as much fun. This is waste. I mean, waste isn't a fun subject, to be fair, is it? So apart from less fun, similar as yesterday. So any questions, anytime, just ask away, and hopefully I can answer it, and if I can't, I will capture it and bring it back to you. Okay. So introduction, what we're going to talk about first is health and safety. Obviously we talked about health and safety yesterday, but that was more about, falling into a deep hole full of sewage, or, falling into a river, and that sort of health and safety. There is aspects around that here about, having the right clothes, the right boots, but we're going to talk about violence and aggression, because this is a very different group of people we're dealing with. And that's why having something like that, where you can whack them, very helpful. So we're going to talk about violence and aggression. So this sector is particularly prone to criminals. I remember inspecting a site, and there were two main operators that ran the site. One had been done for murder, the other one had just got out of jail for GBH. They're the sort of people we often deal with. They were actually very nice guys. But it was still, so we'll talk about that. So in health and safety and managing violence and aggression, we have a certain, it's similar to the plan, do, checklist that you've seen before. Plan, prepare, act, and report. The plan is all about the upfront bit that you can do in the desk, at the desk at home. So, do you have a violence and aggression register? Do you have a list of sites where you know these are doing?
No. Department, especially now, don't do that register.
Okay.
We don't have.
So that might be something to actually do. So when you go on a site and the operators are particularly violent or aggressive, then to actually capture that as a note, so that next time one of you goes, you know in advance that this is potentially what you will be facing with. So once you know that, if you've got sites with operators that are, particularly aggressive, using the police to accompany you is if they'll come. It's sometimes, yeah. You might have to be a bit more flexible about when you go, but it's actually going with the police is back up. So in terms of preparation for going out on site, there are certain things that you can do. So having a fully charged mobile, so if anything goes wrong, you can pick up the phone and make sure you can contact. A lot of this seems obvious, but because you have busy lives, you suddenly get down and go, oh, my phone's dead. Reverse park. You know why?
To run away.
Basically, so you can get out of there. So you choose the place where you can get easiest access, because they will sometimes try and close the gates or block you in. So actually having a place where you can get out, knowing your exits, and this is not just from the site, but if you're in an office or a building, it's not just about fire safety; it's about being able to get out there quickly. Ensure colleagues know where you are. So what we would do is a manager would know, for instance, which sites I'm going to inspect in the day. If I was going to a particularly dodgy site, I'd phone just before I'm entering and say, look, I'm going to be on the site for an hour and a half. I will phone in an hour and a half to say that I'm off the site. And we actually have a full formalised mechanism to do that. It's actually now app-based. We have a safety app that you press. And you can even press just a button on the phone and it will send out signals to and a UK call centre. It's got nothing to do with my agency, it's all outsourced. You can do that. Dynamic risk assessment. So you should always think about risk assessments anyhow as you're going along about various dangers that could impact you. And in this sort of case, this is things are, you're having a discussion, you're telling people they're non-compliant. So it's thinking things are going a bit wrong here. I need to back out, back out. If you need to leave, you need to leave. This whatever you're doing in there is not worth getting beaten up or worse. 100%. And if there's something that there's an ongoing risk and you can't get out, you obviously elevate that to the police. Contact your manager once you get back. If you've got this register, update the register to make sure that people know about it. So when you leave a site because you were going to use enforcement or something like that and you were stopped from doing that, it doesn't mean you aren't going to go back, but you go back with more staff, perhaps with the police, so that you had a better ability to do what you need to do. Okay. So, personal protective equipment. This is an interesting one. Can you tell me an issue with personal protective equipment in this photograph?
One of them.
Without gloves.
One without. So the one touching the waist doesn't have gloves, and the one holding the door does have gloves.
Yeah.
How does that work? So things like that. This, when you're doing these sort of inspections, you really don't know what you're going to be facing. So you want gloves. You want something that will protect you. Gloves that will protect against sharp instruments, using tongs, and you've got to be really careful about being cut with something potentially dangerous to you. There could be all sorts of things in there. You don't know. It could be medical waste or contaminated anything. So something we didn't mention yesterday actually is, do you know about Weil's disease? W-E-I-L.
Maybe we have
might be a
different name, yeah.
Yeah, it comes from rat urine, and it's particularly nasty. So anywhere where you get rats, things like sewage works or in waste, you can get this in. It's not very good. It's one of the things. So one of the things that we do at home is if you're working in sewage or with waste, we would have a card that we would give to the doctor and say that we're potentially exposed to Weil's disease or
Trzeba troszkę leptospirozy. Just translating.
yeah. Is it something you're aware of, or are you aware of it, or look it up out here? Just think about control mechanisms and what have you for that. It's normally having. So these, I think, look like they're not a disposable glove. I don't think they look much more solid. Those kind of rubberized sticker gloves, so give you a little bit more protection. But generally, when you're anywhere exposed to a lot of this stuff, is wearing some sort of gloves, disposable or otherwise, and having the ability to wash your hands. So Weil's disease normally goes in through a cut or an abrasion on your hand. So if you've got those, having them taped up and plastered up. The things we talked about yesterday: high-vis jacket, boots, hard hat. More likely to have a hard hat doing these inspections than wear safety glasses, mask, disposable suits. If you're doing stuff that's dusty or potentially could get on your clothes, a disposable suit would be good. Body cameras, quite good, especially when you're facing violence and aggression. Do you have those?
Yes.
Yes.
We use it when we inspect on your home, not to inspect, we had to use.
Okay. Yeah, so I think using those is good. And the potential to get a chem suit. So if you're doing, we call it fly tipping, dumped waste in the environment. If that's chemical drums or something like that you need to inspect, maybe having a suit like that would help, or at least something that you're not taking that potential contamination home with you. So, okay. So some fundamentals. We talked roughly about some of this yesterday. And it's interesting. In this approach, what I'm doing is looking at it from a different perspective. So, what's the permit for from the perspective of the state? What do you put that down as?
Regulations, maybe.
Yeah.
Conditions when we can hold the waste, also the maximum capacity.
What can you do with that for you?
Yes.
The sort of waste activities.
So it's taking the legislation, translating that into rules and conditions that apply specifically to that side. Yeah. So, and it goes all the way up to EU level. It's not an EU directive, but it's ensuring compliance with the EU directive if the site. What's permit for from the perspective of the operator?
Obligatory to get it.
They say it is, I've got my permit, I can operate.
Yes.
Job done. And that, especially from a waste perspective, this second bit, to know the specific rules that they need to operate against, most just stick with that first bit. And that's the problem for us as regulators. You've got to get them to actually read and understand the permits. So if you've got permits that are very long, written in very complex Lithuanian, very legal Lithuanian, the chances of it, and this is probably what most permits look like because this is the same everywhere, the chances of an operator, specifically a waste operator, understanding all these requirements, pretty slim. I mean, you probably look at the permit condition and go, what does this mean? That comma's there, so which bit actually applies and what they're trying to get. And you can imagine for a waste operator who, doesn't have any significant training, perhaps, maybe not been to high school even, you know, it's, might not even be able to read particularly well. You often find there's a lot of immigrants in this sector, so they probably don't even speak Lithuanian, half of them, you know. It builds up so that those rules that you think you've just given them to operate, the chances are they've not looked at it or can't understand it anyhow. So always be aware of that. And so if I was having this conversation with the Environment Agency, I would be talking about how do you make your permits much more accessible and make them much easier to understand, but also still be legally enforceable. So they'll be legally enforceable as well. So why do we carry out the site inspection? What's the reason?
To check the conditions.
Okay. Yeah. So yeah. What I would say is with waste, other than Schedule 5 is it, in Industrial Emissions Directive, those waste sites, there's no actual legal requirement to do a site inspection. We choose as regulators to do that, but it's not a requirement in EU law that says we have to do that. So we saw this briefly yesterday, and here we talked about the permit. The permit drives the start of the operational bit. So when we do an inspection, the permit is the rules that they've got that says how many fridges they can store inside, how many tons of, glass they can keep, etc., etc. If it's not in the permit, they can't do it. Okay. So key functions: regulate site-specific waste activities, protects the environment, so sets emission limits, requires monitoring and reporting, which I imagine all goes to the Environment Agency. We had a discussion about this with the water sector yesterday. If the permit requires them to send it, and the Environment Agency are responsible for checking, you do not have to check that, okay? Because it's already been done. It's not your, I'll say remit, it's not your remit to check it, because they're responsible. It's not your responsibility to check it, that's probably a better word. You can check it, but it's not your responsibility. So if you're checking it and they've already checked it, you're duplicating effort.
What if they should, but they do not?
That, well,
The good example is about the reports, the monitoring report, the annual report of the water, wastewater, and so on, so on. So there is obligatory to the facilities to send to the agency that report.
Yes, and the job to analyze and
Yes.
see all the view on the side.
And then maybe send to us that look, we just analyzed, and there is some kind of.
So what should happen in a functioning system is that should go to the Environment Agency, and the Environment Agency should be saying, this site doesn't comply. You need to take that into account when you do your inspection planning and look at this during inspection. These sites are all fine, so you don't need to check.
So it sounds like the agency should do some kind of risk estimate for us.
Fundamentally, this is going back a slide. It's a cycle, and it requires all the state actors. So the Environment Agency that's doing the permitting to actually support you to do your role. And equally, where you have feedback of non-compliance or that the permit conditions don't work, you should be letting them know.
Yeah. And that's because now we're playing people to the one side.
Yeah. So it sets compliance and monitoring requirements like internal controls, data reporting requirements. It may dictate competency requirements of their staff. Do they do that? Do you have certificates of technical competence or something like that?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yes. we had discussion
Yeah.
a few days ago, but yeah, they should
Mhm.
every 3 year of the head and the just usual workers. So they should have that courses in the university.
Okay.
So,
So the main thing from a, I guess, inspector's perspective is you can ask when you go on site, you know, a lot of these sites are really quite small, so 1 or 2 staff. Is there somebody here that has one of those competency certificates? Because if there's not, then they shouldn't be running the site. So that's a good question to ask. You know, and sometimes you would. So how would you assess that? You would, you know, they'd probably have the paperwork certificate with their name on, and you want to be able to cross-check that they are who they say they are. Can you show me some card that shows who you are?
They're buying those certificates, companies, for example, the staff don't go for the courses, don't listen, just the manager brings you a paper and say put somewhere in the drawer. When somebody asks you, you will show them. No, because we know, when we're coming to the sites and we are communicating with the staff, so we don't know, this is the manager responsible, we don't know anything, we're not going to speak. And
but there is a
depends.
certificate. But there is
That's on the
already
site.
certificate for that staff who doesn't know anything. So.
Okay.
Yeah. So there are companies learn which one is good, and there are bad guys.
Yeah. We'll talk a bit about that later. Ultimately, the whole thing about permits, though, is it's about ensuring clean waste streams go on for recycling, so it's not, you know, sham disposal where they're sending it off to a third world country to, you know, have people pull things apart. Ensures waste landfill, waste from landfill incineration is minimised. How many? You have some incinerators for sure. I've seen that on the. Sorry? 3. Okay. How many landfills? There's quite a lot. 20.
Landfills about maybe 15.
15, okay.
Something smaller and bigger. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you probably quite a lot of waste still going to landfill at the moment, but you obviously want that
We
minimized.
started to do control now near the gates of the landfill, and we see that because in Lithuania have to come with waste with the note and to be registered in GPS system. When you are moving with the waste, already your information have to be in GPS. This is the waste and producers register. And then who received the waste, for example, they have to confirm that this amount of waste coming to landfill. And what we found last year that, and we carry on doing that coming without papers, coming not that those sort of waste which one has to come. And landfills, they are cancel, like in UK, cancel stockholders, main in Lithuania, and they're doing business. They're washing one out and say, give me to the pocket 60 euros and put in the landfill. So that's quite difficult to catch.
Okay.
And after, you have to stop the car. And then you can do some actions. If you don't stop, so on the landfill, to say to who is those waste, that company is quite difficult. But on the responsibility then goes to landfill the operator.
What some regulators now do, so part of the permit conditions is a webcam on the weighbridge. So 24/7, 365 webcam on the weighbridge. So you can see all the vehicles, you can see the weight pop up, you can see their number plates, and on they often as well have them on the tipping face of the landfill, so you can see waste being tipped and whether it's likely to be compliant waste streams.
But they were doing that at night, no?
The car.
At night, not in the night.
No,
not at night.
Daytime. And then there's money flash. For example, the rūšiavimo kaip recycling company, small council, they collecting from municipality waste and then sorting the waste, and then the same company brings to the landfill all the stuff.
Can I just check? Luca, are you recording this?
Yeah.
Okay. Maybe we shouldn't talk about specific company names.
Delete it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's recording, so.
Yeah. So yeah, need to be aware of that. Yeah. So I think. Also, I've been told. Okay, so next one. Key sections of the waste management permit. I was thinking this looks the same slide as well, so I'm really noticed it. So, waste management permits should be based on different sections. So there's kind of general management, what they should be doing on the site and what they're allowed to do, and then the operations. So these are the specific activities that they're allowed under law, and these will all be defined in the permit. Site requirements about storage. So we talked about fire yesterday morning. Some of the physical requirements would be in here. Funds, if they're required, around liquid waste, etc. Waste acceptance criteria. So all the types of waste, quantities of waste, potential waste that they're not allowed to take should all be clearly listed. And then the operating techniques. Operating techniques are normally based on a plan that they would submit to say this is how we're going to run and manage that site. Do you have a permit and an operator's waste management plan, or do you just have a permit?
Yeah, it's a part of the permit.
It's part of the permit. Okay. So the plan is quite important because the plan sets out how the operator is going to manage this site on a day-to-day basis, what they're going to do, how they're going to move waste around, etc. And it's that is probably the most important bit once you get past the site requirements. So if for instance they are required to have a concrete over the site, once you check that, you don't in one inspection. The next inspection, you don't need to check it all again. What you would do, you'd be checking for wear and tear, perhaps, or any issues with the concrete, but not making sure that it's all concrete, because it was last time.
For example, in this case, if you find out that the operating plan, they are not following the operating plan, is it the permits, in compliance, the permits in compliance, or it's just a separate in compliance? Because in our case, it's a separate in compliance. You cannot say that it's a permit in compliance. That we have the problem here. They can not follow the operating plan, and we will give a fine of €10 or €30, something like this,
So that they would normally for us it would be part of the permit, sort of part of the permit requirement. So it's enforceable, just like any other requirement, because they're required to tell us how they're going to operate and submit that as the permit documents. If they're then doing something completely different, that's a significant.
Because in our case we have the rule of 3 lives, so it means that if we will find out in 1 year we'll find that three times that the facility is not like
not
permit
the conditions as even 120, I think.
But they're coming just before the
new site starts operating.
Okay. Well, that in itself is good. That's important.
We were fighting for it.
Yeah. I would say that where you find that there's non-compliance that requires permit change, either they're doing something that's okay, but they're not licensed to do it, or they're doing something that they shouldn't be doing and it requires a permit change to ensure that they shouldn't do it. Then the easiest way to get them to understand that is to get them out on site and show them, you know, this is our issue on this site.
They don't want responsibility at all. And usually when we giving them information or informing about the violations, they say, "Oh, no, this is a main. No, why you so inspecting? No, like
so strict. If you will take the all parents in Lithuania, in 95% of cases they never been there. Mm-hmm. Never. Just from that time, Jurgita said in 2020, they started to go there for the new permits. I mean, but we have a lot of the old permits, and sometimes, even when we are writing the letter that there is in compliance, and you should think about the renewal, there is no law that they should come and check.
Okay.
So they're waiting for the business. They send the letter to the business. Please come to you. It's time to change your permit.
Yeah.
When would you like to change it?
Yeah.
And they are like, okay, we send it. They're responsible now to come.
Yeah. And that process can take 1 year, 1.5, maybe never. Yeah. We have a retroplacement. It's never.
Never.
Well, it goes back to what does the operator say the permit for? I've got my piece of paper that allows me to operate. Why would I change it? You know. Mm-hmm. So I think it may be worth having future sessions and getting an environment agency in the same room and actually going out on site and actually having workshops together and say, look, our common goal is compliance, clean waste streams, etc. How do we support each other to ensure that and actually share some of those problems?
One of the best. It's so funny. It sounds like pink glasses, but the best probably scenario is to combine this.
Yes, I wanted to tell that. Yes, the best solution would be that.
Actually, this year, I guess we added to our annual plan obligation for agency to go to some inspections with us. They will have some inspections.
I mean, you can actually do it in different ways. So you could do it as it's all about training for the environment agency staff to help with so that they actually understand more issues on the ground and then how they can write back permits. So that's one way of actually viewing it, rather than we want you to come and do what we want. So it's actually what are they going to get out of it? So actually think about how you sell the idea to them, the concept. And it may be something that through the OECD, so the VITO task might be able to bring the groups together.
But it's a question of responsibility and to take a responsibility because, for example, Gita said that now we are going with them. I had this kind of inspections with the agency people, so they are like tourists because they don't have obligatory to feel something. Yeah. So they just walk in, okay, nice, it's beautiful, interesting. And then we that people who writes everything, do everything, and just informing, okay, we just finished our inspection. So
2 weeks we were before the starting site working in inspection with the agents, Fire Rescue Service and National Health Service. So only we wrote some notice that for the three things was. So chemical substances, materials were not allowed on the site, wasn't in permit because they hazardous, and on permit was only non-hazardous chemical materials could be during the site operating. So because the water supply well for the near village were in that zone protection. So they're not allowed to have the hazardous chemical materials.
Okay.
And then they made teams and teams conference and say why not only that. So this is not the big amounts of the big amounts of these chemicals. Why you wrote to us now? We have to give let or not let, and they not deciding, and like our fault that we wrote. Yeah. But we know that if the fire on that place, and if it is those chemicals going to the ground and to the river, polluted river, water will for example. So who is going to be fault? Us, because we haven't done our inspection properly. So that's was what we're dealing. So that Pavel, everybody, we in the same opinion that must be one institution that the room after room, and I'm going and asking like, look, I give.
Just the decision making should be in one hand. In this case, the permits case and the inspection case.
2 years ago, there was one institution.
Yeah.
And we were working the same on permits and inspection.
I guess we will again.
And then they decided that this was very corrupted, so separated.
Yeah.
Okay.
But now we have more problems.
Yeah. Always be careful what you wish for.
You know, the funniest thing that someone told me that we did it by Estonian example, and now Estonians combined.
Lessons learned.
Okay. Did we finish all of that last one? Yeah. So emissions monitoring. So what's just odor, noise, and vibration? Do you have all of
Not
this?
our odor, vibration, noise, health.
Okay.
Controls.
So odor. If odor is not controlled by you, be very. I've got a section in odor here. Be very thankful. Don't wish for odor control.
We
if
know.
you haven't got it.
Hey, can you tell again this because our parliament members think we're having 24/7 call center and we can fast track. It was a couple of months ago discussion in the parliament and the ministry that we take this function with the odor. And I told to get this no.
From an inspector level and somebody on call, it's a nightmare. From an environmental perspective, it makes sense that you guys have that control. So it's a double issue.
The problem is that usually that other problem comes from the facilities which has permits, and our permits. I mean agencies' permits, and we are checking some parts of that permit, but the others is not our competence at the time. So, and usually public opinion is that we should control.
I mean, it would be normal from a. So, for us, we don't control all orders. We control orders from the sites that we manage. So, from a waste management side, we would control the order. But if it was coming from a swimming pool or something where there's chlorine smells all the time, it had nothing to do with us. Or someone burning fire in the back garden and with barbecue smells.
Yes, we have a lot of complaints about the smoking fish.
Yeah, that nothing to do with us. So, which is big. So, Information, so records, reporting, notification, lots of information about EWC codes and what they can and can't contain. We always have plans in ours, so the site plan that details the site boundary.
But sometimes you can't understand as well because
it's such a bad plan.
Because it just show one place and can be 5 different types of waste there.
Okay. So having, what I would say one of the good practices about when you get a new permit is you actually go through it and go, well, when you get a draft permit, ideally it hasn't been issued, and you go through it and say, look, we're not going to be able to inspect against this. So yeah, feedback. Again, it's like working with in this case, the environment agency or the permitting department. Okay. So waste management control here, we've got a quick discussion. So how many waste sites do you think your waste management sites?
We were talking about the big one or
the permitted ones?
We have a lot of them because it's a funny thing because we have like a minor permit and a major permit. The typical So and we have different units to take care of. For example, my unit taking care of that minor, and Jurgita's units they taking care of that major permit. But the logic are the same in this permit. They just the question of capacities and the question of how big it is.
But it will be around.
11,000.
11,000.
Small and big.
Okay. If I tell you that Scotland, which has a population of 6 million people, we have 10,000 permits covering everything. We have other things that are a degree of control. So we talked yesterday about the little houses with granny lives in, has a septic tank, or a small sewage. They have a form of license. There's 120,000 of those, but we don't inspect it. There's 10,000 sites that we would consider inspecting, of which 6,000, probably about 3,000 get an annual inspection, and another 3,000 would be once in every 5 years. So that's
In our case, we just for example, if you just want to sort the waste, it doesn't matter the amount. You should have a permit.
Yeah.
So it's really, we have a lot of them.
So I would say that when we look at that, is actually looking at the level of risk of all of those sites and actually focusing a bit higher on that. Because probably what you find is that even some of the smaller permits have a higher risk than some of the other smaller permits. So actually understanding of those 10,000, say, how many of them are actually really quite important, and how many we can do.
I think we mixed a little bit less. How would you describe the quality?
We'll cancel that. We'll cancel. When we'll come back, we'll cancel.
On my behalf.
How would you describe the quality of the permits? Do they do what they should, do you think?
In my opinion, from the perspective of my unit, it's a disaster. Because we have the permits, now they are changing them, but we still have the old ones, which have nothing granted. Once, I told you last evening that once I went to check it and I find out that it's a flat. Or I went to the facility and there is 10 square meters for the facility which has a permit, and there is written that it's 1,000 square meters. So these kind of things happens all the time.
And agents, 2025, the last year, when they should change the permits, renew them.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So what's the oldest? Do you think the oldest permit?
2005, 2002, 2000, like 30 years, 20 years old.
Do you have access to all the permits?
No. What do you mean by access?
Do you have a copy?
We should have what
Now we have.
I think there's still some.
Yes, lost.
All the permits.
Actually, I guess even the agency doesn't know.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Might be a bit of a
It
problem.
was the case when I was looking for 2014.
But wait, if we would talk about access to all the permits,
It was only
it's
the
easy.
paper
No,
one.
Nothing.
totally not.
It's on paper, it's better.
It's
We don't have
Google Drive access.
consolidated version.
Now we are
Really
scanning and putting in our
Yes.
Others.
But we are doing it.
Yeah.
The funniest thing that we are doing it.
And we're not
Yeah.
sure if it's the newest one, if it's the right one. We're
The
not
last
sure.
version.
Yes. Or it doesn't have any changes or something like that.
So we can say the quality is not high.
No.
Okay.
And if they change some things in the permit, you don't change all permit and give you like a book, yeah? This is changed.
Yeah.
They writing the decision
Yeah.
that is changed, for example, 2.1.
Different
This
things,
change, and then you have a whole permit, you having these decisions, maybe 5 or 10, and you
And that condition's changed
yes,
5 times.
yes.
Yeah.
But, yeah. So we call it codification or consolidation. So having that's good practices, having a consolidated permit. And because you think it's difficult for you guys, what about the operator again? The operator's got to try and go, okay, strike that condition out and that one. Some of them will cut and paste it and have them. So we've already, I think, identified that there's not a very productive relationship where you can have those open discussions to say, look, this isn't work, and then things change. So, how long do waste management inspections last, approximately? So you do big ones, big sites, you do small sites. How long would we normally?
Again, the question is till the final report or just on site?
We can do both.
If we will combine them?
Yeah, well, so you can go just time on site and, well, there's 3 bits, isn't there, to an inspection. There's the preparation, time on site and transport, that kind of side, then the reporting. So if you look at those 3 elements, how big are each?
It depends, of course,
Yes.
because we, as Georgita said, we have that system, waste management system, GetWise, yeah?
Yeah.
So if you are a really good inspector, and you will do the work of the agency, you will check all the reports,
Okay.
you will check all the quantities, are they okay, are they, before your inspection they were okay, and so on. So sometimes I spend even 10 days to do that.
Okay.
But if I will just come there and check the situation on site, so of course it will take 1 day.
Okay.
So it depends. If you have, for example, complex inspection and you have only waste, only waste
Part, yeah.
part to inspect, or only some part, yeah.
Yeah.
So when you look at big one waste site, so all day you can stand there with the documentations and to final report 20 working days. Sometimes you need, if you check the proving documents, to check does amount reach what they wrote and when they, because in Lithuania is importers producers,
Yeah.
they pay less taxes if they have a contract with organization And organization members are producers, importers, and waste companies, and they recycle and treat their waste, and then they pay less taxes.
Okay.
So that's why we check all the documentation.
So are you responsible for supplying information to the tax organisations?
We have a tax department.
So for your own
Yeah.
tax?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, we're doing everything.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So your inspection would generate that information for them. So the tax department in here don't do their own inspection.
They do.
They do as well.
They do as well. They do by our asking, or they having their risk assessment, and the tax department also look water pollution taxes and as well landfills and etc.
It's a good point what Simon said, that maybe it should be their responsibility. I mean, the producers and that field where you just need to check the documents, for example.
So there's two different things going on. Well, there's multiple different things going on here. So you're doing your risk assessment and choosing which sites to go based on how hazardous that they are. That's the most important thing. Or the likelihood of non-compliance of the regulations that control that hazardous or non-hazardous waste, the significant impact on the environment. So what they're trying to do is look at taxation, completely different. So if you're expanding the amount of time that you spend looking at taxation, it means you're not moving to the next site to look at environmental hazard compliance with laws that protect the environment. So your focus becomes diluted. So in terms of being effective and efficient at your task, it gets harder to do. So it's not saying you shouldn't be doing it, but that shouldn't really be a major aspect of the job, or they should also be doing elements of your job.
Yeah.
So it's like, because otherwise the main reason for having waste permits is not about controlling tax, it's about protecting the environment.
If the agency would do their job, the reports, and that GPS system, and the questions of taxes would do another unit, I think we would be able to check the 11,000. Really, because it takes a lot of time, and we are responsible for that.
So I think that there's definitely opportunities there to streamline what you do and to make it more effective, so you can focus on, it's not make it more an effective inspection, not, and what I mean by that, if you do 20 inspections a year, okay, I don't know how many
That's 5,000 inspections per year we have in the department, on all kinds.
Okay.
It's planning.
It's on the plan. We have most of them on plan.
Okay. So that's
like 60% unplanned inspection.
Can you imagine?
So we have about.
And you've got 550 staff. That's nuts.
Yeah, for example, my unit is one of the biggest in Lithuania, the region, and I have 8 people.
I counted for one inspector to look after in Lithuania. If you take, doesn't matter, land, city, forest, protection areas. So the area, if you divide Lithuania into square meters, one inspector checks the place as Kaunas. One inspector have to look as Kaunas, the big city of Lithuania. So how you can look after everything, because at all these scenarios and waste, air pollution, water.
So I for me, the obvious answer, which is probably not your obvious answer is don't even try. You know, because you can never succeed. And the answer is not that you need 5,000 inspectors.
Yeah.
You probably got the right-ish number of inspectors per, without doing any proper analysis. But I look at the size of the organisation, the size of the country, and you go, okay. It is actually changing what you do. So it's changing how you do it, but also changing what you do. You need to get the ability to do that. You need quite a few different things to align up. You need legislation to allow you to do that. You need public will to understand that that's what you're doing, what you're focusing on. So you need a strategy and a plan to be able to move in that direction. So you think, okay, if we're going to need to change legislation, okay, how do we do that? What bits would we need to change? If we need to bring public opinion, how are we going to do that from a communications perspective?
You know, someone should have a strong balls, you know, because in our case, they want us to be everywhere, and it comes from the highest rank. You know?
I can tell you that a lot of politicized maybe we are, because everybody's care about the environment and parliament members and ministry, so we are very popular.
Yeah.
Very popular.
So the
in a bad way.
the obvious way to get there and the ability to, from a public perspective, and is to actually get the minister to sign off the approach. And it could be even that the approach goes via Parliament, and that's agreed and signed into law if it requires legislative change. Then everybody signed up to that from a political perspective. So if they come back and say, "Oh, you need to come and do this," you know, sorry, it's not in the law, or we have higher priorities. You know, we're focused on X, Y, and Z, not offences, and then we talked about last night. Okay, so level of compliance, I think although we haven't spoken about it, well, operators understanding, I think we know that that's not particularly good. Level of compliance with permit requirements sounds that isn't brilliant, but it depends. Good guys, bad guys. And your primary response to identify non-compliance, that's fines, right? Administrative fines, 300 to 500 euro. Is it effective?
No.
Okay. Why still do it?
Just
Some cases, and some cases.
It is the answer, but you have to because the law says so.
Yes.
But the natural, I guess, change required is actually how you change the law and how to get a degree of flexibility. So we've got the ability to leverage fines, and we hardly ever use it because, or certainly small fines, because small fines don't really change the way that you do things. You know, if you get a speeding fine, for instance, is that going to stop you from speeding again? No. What's more likely to stop you from speeding is if that affects your insurance, and your insurance price goes up way.
Or if they will take your driver's license.
Or they take your driver's license. That's way more effective. But you know, if you get stopped by the police and you have to pay a fine, you just go. And it's exactly the same with these operators. You know, 300, 500 euros is for many waste operators when waste value is high, is nothing.
So lunch.
Yeah, it is. So,
For some people.
yeah, so, and I think the effectiveness of that, if that's the primary tool, they know that, so that they almost know that the most likely bad scenario of having the inspector here is they're going to give me a fine. You know? So.
Yeah, as I told you, just not so. Maybe 10 years ago, the effectiveness of inspectors were calculated by fines.
Yeah.
If you give a
Really good from a treasury perspective.
yeah.
and from a, you could see how you'd be a valued part of the state machinery for bringing income. But actually, in terms of changing levels of compliance on the ground, it obviously not good. Okay, so we talked about the need to work together, Environment Agency, and you guys sharing information backwards and forwards. I always like this bit, is actually going with a Team Lithuania approach, okay, and getting the different players to actually understand that you're all trying to achieve the same thing. They're not successful because you're not able to be successful. You're not successful because they're not supporting you to do what you need. Whereas through good collaboration, regardless of if they're separate agencies or organisations, you can work together and get the same positive outcome. So yeah, having that Team Lithuania approach, I think, would work well. On to the future. So we better talk about some solid waste. Saying that was the principal remit. Primary issues, and you see, this is one of the primary issues that is not on the list. So, unsegregated waste, inappropriate storage, poor site management, fire. We had a quick discussion yesterday about fire and my take on fire. There are some waste streams, particularly things like lithium batteries that are, just go pop by themselves. But I think a lot of waste fires are deliberate. Even if you can't show they're deliberate, I think a lot of them probably are deliberate. Certainly that's the agency's conclusion. The things that tend not to be deliberate are when you get...
what does it mean, deliberate?
Yeah.
No, by the
So what we see is so waste price fluctuates, the market value of waste changes quite dramatically over time, and with that, if you can't sell the waste on, it builds up, and their site volumes grow and grow and grow, and they need to get rid of it. They can't sell it. Easiest way is just to torch the whole place and all gone. No more problem. Because the way that they make money is generally not by selling that waste, it's by taking the waste from the operators. So they keep doing that. So we see that quite often. The other things where we see fires and things like shredders and MRFs, where they get bits of material stuck that jam and then go on fire, or getting a gas bottle in a shredder and things like that. So we see that sort of fire. So some sort of things that we would have big problems with are, this is a skip hire company, and they're meant to sort the waste out and ensure that it's all segregated and disposed of. Skip hire is really bad because, for lots of reasons, people put in all sorts of stuff that is very difficult to, one, dispose of correctly, two, sort out, and poor management like this, where they just pile it all up.
You can explain what is skip hire?
A container.
Yeah, the big. It looks like a. What's this? They're normally about a ton, 3 tons, 5 tons, and they come on the back of a lorry. So there's my cab, my lorry bed. They have an arm here with chains.
Yeah.
And this is a skip.
Yeah.
And they dump the skip onto a site
Yeah.
So we are just collecting waste.
Yeah, but it stays there for a week, 3 weeks, you know, and then all sorts of things can be put into there. Everything from demolition waste, black bag waste. So when we talked about the hazards earlier, there could be all sorts of here. You know, you definitely get things like rats running around this, so exposure to Weil's disease could be high from something like this. So this is also the sort of thing where, you know, they're going to have to do a lot of work to segregate that. Be quite easy just to get rid of it by burning it. So once you know about stuff like this, is making sure that they get rid of it as quickly as possible. So one of the tools that we have, which I don't think you guys have, is where a permit has, say, 100 conditions, we can suspend just a few of the conditions. So we could stop the site, not from operating, just from taking in waste. So all the conditions still apply, but they're not allowed to take in waste. So the taking in waste bit is where they make their money. So you're taking away any ability for them to bring in new waste and gain money, but you're making sure that they get rid of the other things before they can then continue operating. And that's quite a powerful
So how does condition can sound?
It's called a partial suspension. Yeah. So.
We also can.
Yes, we have like a mandatory instruction.
So we don't have to go to the courts. We can just say.
No, because like the inspector can decide that he puts mandatory to company, so they cannot, for example, bring more waste.
But it's not suspension of the permit.
Yes, it's not suspension. It's not like that.
Okay.
It's not different.
My question is, what kind of evidence do you need to collect before giving that kind of... Because my point is that in our situation, we are always too late.
Yeah.
So after we need to establish that there is already violation of the permit.
Yeah.
And then we come and say, okay, you are not allowed to bring in more waste, but the problem is already there.
Yeah.
What we would like to have is some kind of preemptive, so that we are seeing that there is a buildup of waste.
Yeah.
It's not coming out, but still the company is within maximum limits.
Yeah.
Do you have anything like that?
So we would use warnings or final warnings for that, which is it's simply a letter, to be honest. But it's a letter saying, you know, we have noted you are at X threshold. We'll go any further, we will have to use enforcement action, sort of thing. And it's that shot over the bows, as it were. That, you know, we are aware. We see what you're doing. Be aware that we're aware, and don't do it. It works quite often, but not all the time. You know, it depends on the sort of operator that you're dealing with. So if we're talking about the 6 C's, the compliance spectrum, if you're talking the criminals or the chances, it's probably not going to work. Well, it will work, but you know, into the middle of that spectrum, then that will work.
And this is a kind of statutory instrument. It's in the law that you...
You know, it's so... A lot of these tools, so like the temporary suspension, that's part of the powers that we can do, but we don't have to go to a court for that. We can just do it. You know, you do it within your own scheme of delegation within the organisation, whether or not you have to, you know, whether it has to go to the CEO or a board or a group of individuals within the organisation. That would we would go to the appropriate level that can sign these things off and just do it. And it because it's administrative tool that you control, it makes it much more easier to actually deploy it as a tool. So, yeah.
If we give even 60 euros, 100 fine to the company, yeah, for some administrative violation. So they have the right to go to the court and fully clean up this fine. If there is some our mistakes like procedures, we late somewhere or not in time was done like our regulations tells. So, so we on every this small fine we have risk to be in the court.
Yeah, which I guess that mechanism needs to be there. That what you see is that some systems every fine can be appealed, so that it means that the whole system slows down because every fine often in some systems is appealed because they know there's a chance they can get the money back. For here though, you know that a small fine for this is probably not going to work. The main driver for here for stopping something like this is stopping them making money. So if you think about the landfill tax or this disposal tax on this, it's going to be quite significant. So if they can avoid that, they will. There's one thing. But if you can stop them making more money, then that's probably the biggest driver you've got, the biggest lever that you can pull.
And I have a question. Sure. When you're sending out warnings, is it when you see non-compliance or when you see a risk of them being non-compliant?
Either or. So if it's something that needs stopped now, we will use our tools and powers to stop it now. But if there's something that's a non-compliance we want to see that disposed of as soon as possible, and we don't see anything else added to it. You know, that's significant. But if there was, say they were allowed to store 10 freezers and there were 12 freezers, as long as those 2 freezers were being stored safely, we're not that bothered that there's an extra couple of freezers there. So we perhaps give them a warning to say, look, we're aware of that you're over capacity, you need to sort that out, but we're not, in this time, we're not going to do any significant enforcement. So,
kind of like a minor non-compliance?
So we don't use enforcement for every non-compliance we see. We kind of, the reality that enforcement costs the regulatory agency lots of money. So what I mean by that is all your resource becomes tied down in doing enforcement, and if it's not achieving a significant goal, it's not achieving better environmental protection or higher levels of compliance overall, then that resource could be used better elsewhere. So it's about, a lot of what we're talking about is all about how you use your resource effectively. So I think, but you say it from an inspector's point of view, and actually, okay, for something like this, you're obviously trying to get it sorted and fixed as quick as possible. This will have odour issues, it will have vermin issues, so it's kind of, so you can see all sorts of black bag waste and all sorts of rubbish in here. You also notice it's not on concrete, so impacting groundwater.
I wanted to ask if this place had a permit.
It did, but not for that activity.
Okay. So I have a question.
Yeah, because now it's
strange place for
all the permits for waste recycling should be on the concrete.
Yeah, but even when it is, like this one, that's still not good. So you've got, again, all this segregated waste. You can see that there's black bag waste, so it will be putrefying. You will be getting vermin coming in here. There's no segregation. So although it's on tarmac, you know.
Collection.
Sorry?
Rainwater collection.
Yeah. Well, so you want this to drain to a sump or to an interceptor, ideally to a sewer, you know, so you can get proper treatment, because the quality of the water coming off that side would be really quite bad. So this is a civic amenity site where the public can just come and put their waste. This is clearly bad. Example, we will be doing something to change that. This is an old photograph. This is what our waste recycling sites look like now. So they're clean. You can see up here there's a dustpan and brush. You know that people are encouraged to tidy up after themselves, but the site operator will also be doing it. It's concrete seams are all solid. They're all clearly signed, and what should go in and what shouldn't go in. There should be also somebody managing the sites and ensuring that people are actually putting things in the right place. That would be good practice. Inappropriate storage. There's some lead acid batteries. You know, fine, they're being grouped together so they're segregated, but it's not appropriate storage because the lead acid will be well, it's probably affected this skip anyhow, but it certainly can escape. I think actually, if you look at it, that might be something that's maybe a shock absorber or something like that from a lorry, something. Yeah, so that's not good. That's much more what we would expect now. There's actually clear signage again, a container where you can close, keep the water out. The ability so these things are quite heavy, the ability for a vehicle to come park next to it, lift them in sort of clearly.
Do people pay for that? Or
it's so we talked about last night, council tax. Okay. So there's domestic tax that each house pays for police, education, lighting.
And there is no limit. They can bring
as much as
they want.
As long as it's not commercial waste.
How do you control?
So one of the ways that, so this isn't my local authority. So my local authority, you have to book a slot online, and you have to say what wastes you're going to take. You have to give your house address, the vehicle registration, and it's all computer controlled. And then you're met at the gate. They have a scanner that checks your number in.
Because we don't have that kind of system, we just get a line.
Yeah.
Everyone can go, even right.
So although it's great for ensuring commercial waste doesn't go there, the negative, because it's harder to do, there'll be some waste that probably gets flagged because it's disposed of in the country because it's trickier to do.
How many sites there are in the city?
How many?
How do you calculate?
How many do you
there must be a calculator how much waste is produced and collected. I don't know. So my county has. So I live in a rural county. The biggest town has a population of 70,000. So we've probably only got 120,000. We've got 3 of these. So most of the population lives in one bit. So we've got 3 in the county. Next one, fridges and freezers. So this is good storage, but bad storage. Okay. So the good thing is they're taking the doors off. So they take the doors off because they're much easier to handle. They're well managed in terms of being tied together, so that they're not going to fall apart and damage the antifreeze bit. The 2 negative bits that I see. You see that? They're on wooden pallets. So wooden pallets rot. So if you're not using fresh, good pallets, they could tip over. The pallet to the right as well doesn't look very good. And then they're not on hard concrete surface. So
would it be a major compliance?
Well, so
Leaking.
yeah, that would, for me, if there's no damage to them, that's the most important thing. You know, if they're stored and protected in a way that they're not actively damaging the environment, that's. If there's a potential, which there is here, that's kind of more non-compliance. But I would expect it to be on a hard surface, and that's the hardest thing to get with operators to do.
What would be the inspector's steps? What would be inspector's steps when he will realize this kind of thing?
So we work with the operator to get a hard surface down. So that would be the principal thing.
Yeah, so you're going to write some kind of mandatory letter or?
Yeah. So your inspection report would say, okay, this is a non-compliance. We expect this to be rectified within X.
It's not the inspector who decides. There is a board of people.
No, the inspector.
Inspector will decide.
Yeah.
And what about the timeline? Because we have problems. Sometimes some of them can do it in a month. Other need half of the year. So.
Yeah. So what I always say with concrete in particular, because concrete is pretty much, or asphalt, the most important thing for most of these sites is actually getting that done. Many of these sites have lots of money some of the time and no money the rest of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So if you go in when you know that you've got no money, the chances of them actually doing anything are pretty slim. So you can be quite opportunistic with this. If you know, for instance, that a particular sector is booming, so say the scrap sector is booming and the price of scrap is really high, actually you have leverage, okay, because you know they have money. Okay. If you stop them from accepting waste because the site isn't tarmacked, they're losing money, they're losing significant money. So that is a much easier time to get them to do something than actually when the price of scrap is low and it's just piling up on site. Okay, so it's being opportunistic with your regulation, and actually you can, to a certain extent, be flexible with an inspection campaign and actually go, okay, we've got an opportunity here, let's get out in the next 6 weeks and actually see what we can do in this sector. I've got a slide in a minute. If you've got a site with liquid or heavily polluting materials on it, that jumps straight away into significant non-compliance because there's a threat to the environment, a significant ongoing.
How do you know is it hazardous or non-hazardous?
We have a checklist that we basically use to identify when things are likely to be hazardous or non-hazardous, and it goes to things like asbestos, oils, etc. And go through this. It's not going through every EWC code and going has, non-has, and working that out. Our guidance is much more pragmatic. I can send you a copy of it actually. It's only a couple of slides.
Can I ask who decides it's warning or inspection? Inspector or
you decide what?
Who decides are you sending just warning or you do inspection? Inspection?
Yeah.
It's not in the law. The criteria or something.
No. So we have the. So I talked about the scheme of delegation where decisions can be made. So the inspector has quite a lot of power in terms of what tools to use to get compliant. And the things like working in as a team.
And this the scheme is in the enforcement management model or no?
So the scheme of delegation is a written document that the agency has that says that every regulatory decision at a certain level, certain activity, where it can be made. So, so for instance, if the inspector, if the permitting officer tried to sign a permit, that permit wouldn't be valid. The permit team leader has to sign the permit, okay, and stuff like that. So it ensures that the various regulatory decisions are taken in the right place.
I have one question. When you use a partial suspension, when the company cannot take more waste, is there any kind of register or website where people can check if that company can take?
That is a really good point. Yes and no is my answer, which is not helpful. We had that, but we had this massive cyber attack that took a lot of this out. So a lot of it was on linked into the web, and you can look up and find out each site, their permit conditions, what they could and couldn't do. So that was quite useful, but we haven't got that.
So how do you ensure that they don't take new?
Well, so what should happen now is, so in that civic amenity site, if I sit at home, if I said I want to dispose of a freezer, they've said, sorry, we can't take a freezer. They should actively be doing it.
But do you control it anyhow? Because maybe they would be, okay, there is no inspector around, so we're...
Yeah, but it's... The thing about our system is that we, for our high activities where we think are higher risk, or if we suspended something like that, we would go often, you know. For a suspension, so our inspections, say a high-risk site, let's say a high-risk site, and you did one inspection. As soon as you get a non-compliance, you're not waiting 6 months. So the Industrial Emissions Directive says you've got to do something within 6 months. We would just go as often as we need. Because the preparation time is pretty low, because you know you're going to check just a small area. You just drive to the site, you know, you could be going to another site, and you just drive in, check what compliance is like against this condition, and go on. Because the whole thing about suspension is, because that's affecting their finances, they want to show that they're compliant as soon as possible, so they can go back to making money.
What is a legal, legal way to all the time enter the facilities as at the time you wish to enter? I mean, in our cases, we are writing that legal act, the letter that we're starting your inspection. So, and the law says that we have 20 working days to finish it. In any case, finish. We can prolong that. But in any way, we are our inspectors. Sometimes they are forced to do it in some kind of time, and we're just all of them. We're just trying to be on that time, and it's really hard.
So, for us, an inspection ends as soon as you leave the site. You know, you can go as often as you want.
And you shouldn't write any later that we are starting, we are coming, and then so on.
You don't have to. Not for something like this. For big sites, you know, if I was going to a refinery, I would obviously let them know that I was going, because I need to see the environment manager and whoever's going to, you know, send them around, go sign on this. No, you just turn up. Yeah.
We have the inspections we inform 10 days before.
Okay. I mean that's not uncommon, but so a planned inspection would be identifying the no compliance. Once you've identified that, you can go. That's part of the enforcement response. It's not an inspection. You're just checking to ensure that they're compliant with the requirement that you've got. So I wouldn't say that that's a prime inspection per se. So yeah, so we could go as often as required.
From what I see and how I understand our
issue, the non-compliance is those drums at the back, which are not in the bund. So also just a little kind of health and safety type thing is if that's the inspector, which I think it possibly was, I can't remember, if they're standing in oil, that then gets taken back to the car and probably then the office maybe or whatever. So actually, yeah, and yeah, so just think about stuff like that. What about this one? So these are double skinned. There's 2 layers to this, so they normally comply with some bond requirements, and depending on the substances being in them. So what's inappropriate about here is you've got some drums of various material, some oil there that's not in the bond. There's one thing. What about having gas next to the flame? Yeah, that's not particularly good either, is it? You know, so that's what you would be pulling up there.
But it's not in the permit. How do you? Yeah, in the permit.
It probably is.
Well,
sorry.
The places where there should be the.
Yeah, but what you can sometimes see is that the permits aren't as specific as they need to be. So they'll say that you need to have oil in it, but the fact that they haven't done it with all the oil, or you need to store the gas canisters all together, so they've stored them all together, but they've put them next to the oil. So you see a lot more of these now. These are double bunded tanks where somebody could just go in and pour some used oil. The issue here is not that tank. That tank's good, but you always get a little spillage. So this is all pretty fresh concrete, but there's a bit of spillage. That's always going to happen. So you need to have something that's collecting the oil around the surface. So here's a little very small bund again for, well, there's a poor maintenance, there's a big crack in it, and you can see that there's oil up here, so you would be definitely picking that up.
But in this case, you don't count damage for the nature, or just only they can clean and.
So this, depending, how far that went, if it's still on the site and blah blah blah, I would just be picking this up as a non-compliance, and they need to fix their bond as soon as possible. If there's significant, spillage, I would be getting them to clean it up and probably remove contaminated land. So depending on how much there is. This next one's quite interesting. So you've got a double skin tank, great. Inside a bond, even better, with a roof on it to stop any rainwater. But they're still non-compliant. Why is it non-compliant?
Access to it?
No, access is fine.
Next to those store.
Yeah.
It's not all in the tank, not all in the bund. So look out for stuff like this, because here you go, wow, that's above and beyond. But actually,
more easy and more practical to take to remove from here than from there.
Yeah. So this next one, this is starting to get into significant non-compliance territories. So these are engine blocks. If you look at them, they look all black and oily because they are. So what you would expect, so it's on concrete, so that's good. But they basically should have been depolluted before they got put into a pile like this. which they weren't. So what they basically were doing was turning their cars upside down, then ripping their engines out with a crane digger thing, and then just dumping them in the pile so that oil was going over the place. So a couple of things that you'd be looking at here. One, you've got inappropriate treatment, so that's a big thing. But there's no, storage of all these components so that contamination is going to stay in the same place if you go anywhere. I would be also checking on the other side of this bundled wall, because it's so high it could well have an impact on the other side. I'll be looking at that. So there's lots of significant things with this that you'd be concerned about. Poor site management. So this sort of, you see this quite often, a kind of cloudy, viscousy fluid, this hydraulic oil, most likely. But you also see cracks in concrete. So although it's on concrete, you want to see that improved. I give them a bit of time to do that, but you want to see improved. The spillage you want to see cleaned up straight away. Okay, they should be doing that on a routine basis. And this one, it's not on a, you can see here, gravelly type stuff. So it's not on a concrete basis. There's rainwater pooling when it shouldn't. But that would be quite significant non-compliance as well, because it's very likely that you've got groundwater pollution or perhaps surface water pollution. Other things in terms of the poor site management, poor litter control. So where it's starting to blow off site, leave site, and get them to pick that up straight away. Open burning of waste. Any burning of waste on a waste management site is a significant non-compliance. Unless they're technically allowed to do that, it shouldn't be open burning, but some of them are allowed to burn some, or like mini foundries for recovering some metal waste and things. If we had a site that had a significant fire, almost regardless of the cause, but certainly if we had any thought that it was deliberate, we would be going for criminal prosecution. So it would be a criminal case, and that would set out, volume of waste that we suspected had gone on fire, impact. And in that we would have a financial summary, which would be damage, suspected damage, and what have you, impact on receiving environment, impact on general public, etc. We'd have all that in there, and our aim would be not so much to recover the cost, but actually to stop them from operating again. So. We are aim for a significant fire, unless it was an accidental or a process. So some of these lithium battery ones, we might still seek prosecution, but we're not necessarily trying to close the site down forever. But some we would, because we would say that's careless, that happened. The systems weren't in place. But in some of these sites where we suspect it's deliberate, that it's just a criminal activity. So we would try and get jail time or significant.
So it means that you skip that part usually. I mean, the damage to the environment. For example, in this case, there's air pollution.
Yeah.
So probably it's a really hard methodology to calculate, and it's, as you said before, it's really hard to, in the court, it's really hard to prove. Yeah. So are you still obligated to calculate it, or you're just trying to go on the criminal?
So we're going on the criminal, but we're trying to show to the judge effectively what the costs associated with this. The bit that we would be expressly calculated will be the proceeds of crime. So we have a POCR Act, Proceeds of Crime Act, where you can look to recover the cost of any monies that they've made by that criminal activity. So that if they were collecting waste illegally, how much money did they make? If there was, inappropriate disposal, how much money did they save? How much tax did they avoid by doing that? And put that all into a lump sum and recover all of that, basically. So there's no profit made by that organisation. So there's two levels to that. There's the criminal case to actually prosecute the individuals or the company, and then there's a proceeds of crime case going at the same time, trying to recover all the costs.
And the main thing that criminal cases you're doing by your own, you're not giving it to, as in our case, we're giving it to police to prosecute. So you are doing that job.
Yeah. So as an inspector, you have to write that prosecution case and go to court, stand in the witness box, which is not fun, I can tell you. How are we doing for time? Okay. If we take a quick 5 minutes, and then we'll crack on. Because unfortunately, I need to be away at 11:30 on time today.
I forgot about textile waste, but probably here don't have anything.
So there's nothing specific in textile waste. What's your question?
Textile waste is for us is important because we receive a lot of textile from UK. I think they collecting as charity organizations or some organizations door by doors.
Yeah.
And after we get those waste, and then they sorting out them. All these clothes here in Lithuania, but without any permit. And then sent to Africa, which some states remains in Lithuania and for sale, and others goes to landfill or other waste companies for the other treatment. So the thing is that the questions about the permit and how, because we found some guidelines for the textile waste in UK, and we understand from those that coming waste, not clothes.
Okay. So there's a couple of things here. If it's waste and it's been shipped internationally, it should have the right paperwork to be able to do that, and it should be destined for a fully licensed site to be able to deal with it. If it's not, send the waste back. By which I mean contact the UK authorities, which one it is, and say, this is your waste, you have to take it back. Okay. So that's the easiest mechanism, because then that stops the process just keep occurring. If they haven't got a permit, if it's classified as waste, be it by a regulator in the UK or by a regulator here, then you need a waste management permit too.
But would you classify it as a waste?
But it depends.
Because it sounds like it's not a waste, it's like a...
Yeah.
Human people to people,
Yeah, so it really depends on how it's collected in the UK and whether it's classified as waste in the UK. If it's not, then you don't need a permit to deal with it. Yeah. So then all you're dealing with then is the component of the waste that's going to landfill to ensure that that's disposed, or wherever, to ensure that it's being disposed of appropriately. They are then the producers of the waste, so that's how you treat it. So
the company is going to tell how it's suitable more for the company. So how is practice? Sorry, about 5 minutes break.
Yeah, all right.
The practice with returning waste back to, for example, let it be UK, yeah?
Yeah.
how is the difficult way or you returning waste to Lithuania during the regulations EU 2000?
Waste shipment frames.
Yeah.
So basically, what you would do is.
Are you trusting of the competent fully, or if it is even criminal investigation in country going on?
So there's different ways to tackle this. If you're intercepting the waste before it gets to the company, so if you're picking up the container outside the site, you saying, okay, this is not classified as waste and it should be classified as waste, then you can contact the competent authority back in and say, look, this is impounded, you need to take it back. So that would be that methodology. If it's actually on the site and they're carrying out an activity that you suspect or know is a waste management activity that should be permitted, they're then breaking your domestic law, so you would go through your enforcement routes to deal with that, be it criminal investigation or fines or whatever, or ensuring that they get a permit that allows them to do it. So,
Do you have practice when waste shipment was legal and you back or somebody returned the waste?
We've had waste come
and during, together in one line with the criminal case, for example, when the criminal case became out, and because we're having with one country problem, we have a hazardous 600 liters of hazardous waste, and 700 liters or tons.
700
tons. And now we say we start investigation and we investigation together working with the prosecution office, and they say we are still investigating, and 2 years and half those waste storing in Lithuania, we paying money for the storage, and the practice of other countries to push a little bit more.
So what the best example of this is probably the Dutch, because they have Rotterdam Harbour, which is where most containers, waste movement and shipping movements go through Europe. They have port inspectors from customs, but also from waste shipment regulations from the Island T, which is the Institute of Transport, Environment and something else. So their transfrontier shipment of waste inspectors would identify a movement of waste into their country, for instance, and they would go, we're not having it. It might be destined to go straight on to Ghana or whatever, but they say, no, this isn't right, this is waste. It's not written as waste. It's not allowed to, the receiving country is not meant to be taking this. You, as a competent authority back in the UK, have to take this back. And we would be responsible for shipping that back and paying for the cost. If we can recover that cost from the operator that sent it, we would. But first level impact is that you as a regulator pay for it. And it can be really expensive. It's sort of 20,000 euros perhaps for a single container. And sometimes they're sending 20 containers at once. So,
even if it is already in the board, you bear the cost of putting it back, and if you say, wait, I'm not sure, I will investigate internally in the UK whether it's a illegal shipment, and you carry out the investigation for some time.
And we have that cost. So, and it may be that, say if it was a fully criminal activity, you can't go back to the company and say, well, you have to dispose of that. Say if that didn't exist, that responsibility would rely on us to actually ensure that there was appropriate disposal. So it could, I mean, if it was, you know, chemical waste, it could be really expensive.
And did you have any court cases, for example, with Amsterdam? I mean, with the authority which says take it now, and you say wait.
So the receiving authority can send back, receiving in the country when you can send it back, and you've got no sanction or callback about it, but you basically have to take it. And then we have taken criminal cases on the back of that. So Katie Ollie, the best place to speak about this is Impel's waste shipment rates bit. And Katie in particular, as she leads our waste shipment team, but she is an international expert on this, so you just ask her a question on Basecamp. Or I can give you a katie.ollie@sepa.org.
Yeah, I know, because last year we were in conference on the final shipping waste, so she was the project leader, and now we have been participating in the start of the 2025, so contact her.
Yeah, so she'll give you...
And we'll give somebody from Rotterdam.
Yeah. I've got literally, I've got about 20 minutes before I'm scheduled to finish, and where I need to finish because of the flight. I can go through a couple more slides, and then you can have the rest of the day off, as far as I'm concerned. But no, if that's okay. Are you happy with that? Yeah. Yeah. So we're going to talk about odour. So you have no responsibility of odour, but you're considering how you can get it. So this is odour from an abattoir, a waste. It's not an abattoir. It's a rendering site where they take animal byproducts and turn them into fat and grease. It's a lovely site, or it was a lovely site. This is the sort of site where you're dealing with odours like this, where you definitely need a paper disposable suit, because it goes onto your clothes and it stinks and it stays there. Normally our inspectors, when they visit this site, would go for a shower as soon as, because it's gross, and you see why. So there's a couple of different things with odour. This is all to do with blood and animal byproducts. So what you're looking at here is process design and maintenance issues around the site that cause odour. So this first one is a valve hasn't been secured properly, and basically blood has escaped and it's oxidised, and blood sort of goes, the fatty bit oxidised, and you can imagine it smells. So actually controlling process design and maintenance is key on these sites. The next one, site integrity. Any hole in a building will lead to significant odour. So if the odour is that bad inside, a hole like this could cause a significant odour issue for multiple kilometres. Okay. So the scale of these things can be immense, and if the site is anywhere near a significant area of population, you can get lots of calls very, very quickly about this. So site integrity is quite important. So the importance of controlling storage. So this is raw material coming in. You can see it's obviously leaking from the vehicle. That would be a source of odour, and waste storage itself afterwards. So it's before it goes for disposal. They only control very, very tightly, such that raw materials don't stack up at the site. You only have enough raw materials that the site can accept pretty much straight away. And same with waste storage. Once they're taking waste off the site, it needs to go straight away. So process air, so or air control inside the process. Who's a veggie? Any vegetarians here? Other than me? This is the sort of thing that makes you go veggie, by the way. So poor process design. So doors are left. There's no alarm system that says this door's open. We need to get it closed. There's no double door airlock sort of process on here. There's no negative pressure that's sucking the air back in. You know, all those systems should be here within that. Okay, the next one's a bit bad. I apologise in advance. So the quality of the raw materials themselves is actually really quite important. So here we're talking about rendering sites, but it could be anaerobic digestion or anything where the materials are great. All of this still applies. So the age of raw materials, you want them to come into the process and be treated while they're still fresh, so they're not putrefying and causing more emissions. So there's a whole pig across there, various bits of it is. And then on the next one, this is all rib cases of cattle and things. But you can see the liquid, it's kind of washing up bits, and all that liquid is actually giving rise to another source of odour because of a badly controlled process. This is a effluent treatment process, and we talked about this yesterday. This is what was it? It was an activated sludge unit that wasn't being controlled and managed, and so that materials are actually coming over the top and actually contaminating the site significantly, being a cause of odour. If you do regulate odour, what you don't really want to have to control is things like odour from a wastewater treatment works. Wastewater treatment works are always going to smell. They're always sited, as we described yesterday, away from town, but then what happens is town grows and builds so it becomes close to the wastewater treatment works. So that people then complain that there's an odour, and it's very difficult to then contain odour on a site like we saw the footprint of the Vilnius sewage works. Imagine trying to control odour from each of those tanks. It'd be very difficult. They'd have to basically contain the whole site, and that'd be very, very costly. So there's just a couple of slides to talk about odour and process control. I said I was going to talk about MRFs, so using checklists. We'll skip this one. There are some pros and cons of using checklists. So checklists are not all good. So they're great for acting as an aide-memoire, for consistency and standardising, minimising perhaps some of the things that you need to look at. Quite useful for the document and record keeping. And you can also, depending on how you ask the questions in there, you can see trends as well, get some useful information. And they can be quite good in terms of training to show your approach to regulating a particular activity or site. The cons, the negatives, there is a potential for you as an inspector to have an over-reliance on this checklist. So instead of having a well-trained inspector who can think out of the box, they get focused in on the checklist and what it says. So you can also, depending on how how complete or otherwise the checklist has, you could have something where tick, 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 all good, but actually something that's not on the checklist is significantly non-compliant. You can just say, site is good because everything's green. So understanding that So I think as long as when you develop a checklist, you're aware of these issues and you build into your training and process the kind of ability to do critical thinking outside of.
So, is it possible to see your questionnaires or checklists? I mean, to get familiar with because it's so interesting. Now we are trying to change it.
Yeah.
We just can.
So most of the time now we don't use checklists. We have a very open box system, and that because we're not really going to get an opportunity to talk about it today, but because we can focus on inspection, we don't have to go through every condition of the permit. We can go, okay, the most important thing on this permit is the air emissions. So we're going to focus solely on air emissions and pretty much ignore the rest unless we see significant non-compliance. But we'll focus on air emissions. And you would just work out your way through the relevant conditions and what you need to do on that. But yeah, so we moved away from checklists. So we had checklists for waste. When did we stop using that? 2005 maybe, something like that. But then the problem for us with the checklist is we were going fine, fine, not fine, 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 not fine. Okay, and then next time we came, we would go fine, 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 still not fine, 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 not fine. And it was the fact that the checklist wasn't driving us to do something about it. So the most important thing is not necessarily that you identify the non-compliance, but when you identify the non-compliance, you do something about it, you get compliance. And our system was focusing too much on the identification rather than the actual follow-up of that identification. So I think that was part of the reason why we changed. Okay. So some checklist design principles that sort of I developed, linking them to the permit. So there's different checklists you can have. You can look at them at different levels. You can look at them either at a regime level, so for waste, you can have one checklist that covers all of it, or you can have it at a sectoral level or an activity level. And the choice is really up to you. The fundamental is that it shouldn't take you too far away from what the permit requirements are. So if the permit requirements talk about storage, in terms of type of storage, volume of storage, where the storage is, if you have a checklist that says, is storage appropriate? Yes, no. If you're saying yes, that yes means all the relevant bits of storage are fine, and if you say no, you then have to say which bits are not fine. So which of because giving an operator something that says your storage is inadequate, is not helpful for them. You need to be quite specific at this point, and this point, and this point. So once you have a no on the checklist, is then actually then pulling that apart of it and identifying which bits are actually non-compliant. Structure and organisation of the checklist, logical flow through the process or through the permit, and I would change them based on different activities. So with waste, I would structure a checklist based around the standard waste permit template. For wastewater treatment works that we did yesterday, I would design it through a process flow from inlet to river. So I would take a different approach based on the different ways of looking at things. I think it's important that the move to be able to prioritise, so that although you have a checklist with 32 boxes covering the entire waste management permit, that actually you only need to check in certain inspections 6 of them, if you're being able to focus. So the ability to say in a checklist, not checked, I think is quite important. So if you're going to focus, as I said, on a particular issue, that you have the ability there. Clear language, so the usability of it, so that there's no ambiguity about what you're talking about on the checklist. Easy to use. The good thing about checklists is they are really easy to digitize. So you can either fill them in the field. The next stage from that is that you can actually put them online. They're very easy to show. And if you have good clear language that are well set out, from a process design perspective, they're very easy to then link into a kind of tablet filling in system and a website. Flexibility, space for comments, so that ties into the once you find a non-compliance. Allow ability to capture other things, either other non-compliances that you've not covered within the checklist perhaps, or where you discuss with the operator things like their plans for the future or whatever, you can sort of put that, capture that as well. So having that space, because if you want people to think out of the box, they need the comments to capture things out of the box a little bit. We talked about generic or specific, so that's up to you guys. MRFs, materials recovery facilities. I'm going to go whistle stop through 3 or 4 slides. You will get a copy of these slides so you can look at them in a bit more in depth. So these you will see throughout Lithuania. They'll be worked on different waste streams, from fairly clean waste streams, which are largely pre-separated waste, to a completely dirty one. They can be good, but are often quite dirty processes. When we talk about working with different agencies to get sites closed down, these sites often have, or can often have, illegal immigrants working on them. So they're kind of modern day slavery type of things. Potentially falls into this space. So just be aware of that, and if you see anything that you think is looking illegal, then reporting that to probably Labour. So there's different ways of doing it, kind of manual or using technology. You will see both. Trommel screens are probably the most common. They work best on things like construction waste with soil and concrete. The soil will actually go through the screen because it's significantly different size to concrete plastic. But you've got eddy currents for aluminium, optical separation that can pick out different sorts of plastics, and with blowers on, magnetic separation for metals. So lots of different ways of actually doing them. There we go. Here's a big set of things that you would be looking for. And the things like, you will see waste pile up during the day-to-day operations, but what you want to see is that waste is cleaned up for on a day-to-day basis. Part of this depends on when you were there. So if you're there first thing in the morning, if there's piles of waste spilled all over the place, and the equipment isn't running yet, you can actually say, okay, they're not tidying up. Or if there's signs of old waste building up in corners and things, you know that their site maintenance isn't good. That will give rise to odour, that will give rise to pests, vermin, more likely to get, if you've got black bag waste, municipal waste, you will get flies, rats. If it's stored outside, you'll get gulls, birds, foxes, and how they're all controlled. In terms of building up a checklist, I would base it on the development of the permit. So permit is often based on something like this, and they take you through each category that you would inspect. But you're not necessarily going to inspect all of these. As I said, it really depends. Some sites you do a full audit inspection, an in-depth inspection, go through everything. But others you would just be focusing on key elements. And as I said, that if you're doing a temporary suspension of permit, you would only be perhaps going back to check on things like waste reception, incoming waste, and actually not inspecting anything else. And it continues. So always again ties back to the permit requirements. If the permit says you're allowed 10 fridges is what they should be. If there's not, in terms of non-compliance, it's about understanding the impact of that. So if it's if there's a few extra fridges, for instance, I use fridges because it's really easy, they're big and white. If they're stored in a controlled manner, don't worry about it. Just bring it up as you need to ensure that your storage stays within the limits. If there's then issues that the fridges are being stored in a way that could damage them, you've got much more of an issue, and that could be whether there's one fridge or 2 fridges, never mind 10 fridges. That's much more important to me for a waste type like that. If it's black bag municipal waste that's been gathered before it goes through a MRF or something, if that's over its storage limit, then they've probably got a problem because they're not going to be able to treat all that waste in one day. So they'll get waste staying overnight in the treatment area, and that'll give rise to pests and vermin. Okay, so that is kind of me. I was going to go on and talk about risk, but I'm afraid that will have to wait for another time. But you can have the slides in here. Okay. I hope you found it useful.
Very much.
Thank you. Cool. Thank you.
Simon, thank you very much. We would like you to come back.
Okay.
I think that this encounter was one of the most kind of practical and useful, and my colleagues agree with that. So we would like to cooperate and to invest into our tools, and thanks a lot.
Thank you. I'd just like to say thank you for making me so welcome, so thank you very much. I think one of the things we can do is actually this is trying to download as much learning and make your eyes open, your brains expand opportunities. But there's also ways you can look at, okay, we want to do this particular thing, how do we explore this a bit further, a bit more shared workshop and help you develop things further. So there's lots of opportunities in here. Thank you. Right, I better run.